So the orange criminal is apparently planning to launch missiles at the United States. Midas Touch, you may have heard, is reporting that Trump is going to have Navy warships stationed off the coast of California to fire missiles into Camp Pendleton. And this is to coincide, apparently, with the No Kings protests. Now, why is he doing this? Is it to distract from the protests? Is it to try to intimidate people? I don't know. But I was wondering, if this is true, just imagine, what if one of these missiles went awry and killed a bunch of people in California? Would Congress do anything about it? The fact that you know the answer to that question just shows how fucked up this country is. Because you and I both know that if Donald Trump fired missiles at the United States and American citizens were killed, that not a damn thing would happen to him.
This is not a coincidence. This is not timing or marketing. This is strategy. They want a missile display over California right during the No Kings protest. And that's not just optics. It's intimidation, using a military spectacle to shadow dissent. Reports circulated that military ammo might be fired, coastal ranges activated, and major roads possibly affected. All timed to match the protest schedule perfectly. Graffiti rumors said highways like I-5 would close. Then the Marines and Navy scrambled to say, we'll stick to training ranges, no public roads, safety protocols intact. But that response came after fear was seated. That's how they work. Throw the threat first, dial it back later, when the crowd is unsettled. Put yourself in the boots of the protesters. You show up with signs, chants, hope, and above, you hear rockets. That's a message in itself. Stay home. Stay small. Don't make waves. When force shadows free speech, we don't call it security, we call it suppression. When spectacle is turned into threat, the balance shifts, and the people lose ground. Ask them, who greenlit the timing? Why align live fire display with civil activism? Whose political influence gets pumped by fear? Don't let them hide behind disclaimers after they've dropped the idea into the public mind, because this is not showmanship, this is pressure. And if we tolerate protests met with missile rumors, we legitimize fear as a tool of governance. If you believe in protest, in dissent, in free voices, then this moment matters. Call your leaders, demand they rule out live fire near protest zones, make sure the timelines, contracts, communications all become public. They want to scare us with their toys. They've got another thing coming.
I truly believe that Trump is going to use the No Kings protest this weekend to declare martial law or invoke the Insurrection Act. Here's why I think that. Earlier today, a memo was leaked, or I think intentionally leaked, that said federal agents have alerted local law enforcement that anyone attending these protests or rallies anywhere in the country are suspected to be terrorists. Anyone who does not want a dictatorial, monarch-like ruler in the United States is now suspected to be a terrorist just by showing up there. And I really think that they're going to try and start trouble. And I think they're going to try and start trouble in larger cities. One, because it's easier to infiltrate in large crowds. And two, it's what's going to get media attention. Let's be real. He runs everything like a reality show. If trouble starts in a city like Chicago or New York or Boston or LA or Portland, he's going to go, see, I told you so. And he's going to use that to invoke the Insurrection Act or martial law in that area. And it's going to spread. And this will also be the beginning of the end of the regime because people, well, any decent Republicans left, that is, will see that this is the most un-American administration, the most unconstitutional thing that could possibly be done. America was founded never to have a dictatorial monarch. That was never the intention of our founders. The intention of our uninformed and undereducated electorate, I can't speak to that because I'm not one of those. I'm one of the overeducated. And I know you're going to come in the comments at that. I don't care. But be careful this weekend. That's my prediction. It is my opinion. It is a prediction.
This video is a message for Pete Hegseth from the wife of an active duty service member. Mother Have you forgotten who you work for? Not who has the power to hire and fire you. To be clear, we all understand that you serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States. But that isn't who you work for. It isn't who you serve. As a public servant, just like the many much more qualified public servants who came before you, you work for the American people. Even more specifically, as Secretary of Defense, you are meant to serve the men and women who serve under you. That's what actual leadership looks like, by the way, something that you clearly know nothing about. You've made it very clear through your behavior that you don't give a single flying about the safety of service members. You only care about your own reputation and your own safety. Hell, the professionals working at the Pentagon, including many Trump loyalists, have been practically screaming from the rooftops just how incompetent, stupid, and selfish you really are. Unfortunately, the commander-in-chief is the one and only man in government right now who is somehow even dumber and more selfish than you are, so their dire warnings have sadly gone unheeded. But your selfishness is on full display with your recent demand that journalists covering the Pentagon sign what amounts to a loyalty pledge to you. But there's just one small problem with that, Pete. Those journalists, unlike you, have not forgotten who they work for. They remember that their loyalty is to the American people and, even more importantly, to the truth. In fact, your demand that they sign this pledge is so egregious and so anti-American that outlets on both sides of the aisle have told you to sit and spin on that stupid pledge of yours. Hell, even Fox News and Newsmax told you to shove it. And speaking as the wife of one of the deployed service members that you put in danger when you texted classified details about impending airstrikes, I want to make it very clear to you, Pete, that we see what you are doing right now. And even more importantly, we see why you are doing it. Because again, I know you don't give a flying about my husband's life or the lives of any of the other countless service members you have already endangered. You are doing this to prevent the American people from finding out about your inevitable future where you endanger service members' lives. Because even you are self-aware enough to know that those are coming. How couldn't they be, after all, when you are a barely functioning alcoholic? You've kept yourself so pickled in a bottle of cheap whiskey that you've managed to ruin not one, but 2 marriages in a row by repeatedly stumbling into the beds of other women, including at least one woman who has made it very clear that the act was not consensual on her part. Although, to be fair to wife number 3, Jennifer, the one that's still by your side, it wasn't just your affair with her that ruined your second marriage. It was also your predilection for drunkenly beating wife number 2. And look, I get that your behavior over the years has indicated that you have no real concern for the safety of your own family. Abusers usually don't. But you need to understand that that is not how other military families view our service member. We love them, and we will hold anyone accountable who puts them in unnecessary danger out of sheer incompetence or narcissism or whatever the is wrong with you, Pete. So yeah, you may have been able to temporarily clear the Pentagon of the journalists who were doing their jobs and not just acting as your personal propaganda arm. But do not think for a single second that you will be able to hide your misdeeds forever. We will find out. And we will hold you accountable. And Daddy Trump won't be able to protect you from the consequences of your own actions forever.
Okay, everybody. It's about 2:15 p.m. on Thursday, October 16th. I just took a little nap for a little bit. Woke up to find out that John Bolton, former national security advisor for Donald Trump, has been indicted. He has been indicted on 18 felony counts. I just found a copy of his indictment. I haven't read through the whole thing yet, but counts 1 through 8 are transmission of national defense information, meaning that he had classified information and somehow transmitted it to others. On page 20 of the indictment, there are descriptions of the documents that he possessed, their classification indicators being top secret, and some other classifications and the dates on which he transmitted those documents. when I looked at this section of the indictment, couple things. I thought, oh, wow, that's exactly what Pete Hegseth did in his Signal chat. And what Pete Hegseth did in his Signal chat when he transmitted confidential, classified war plans to multiple other people in a group chat over Signal, including a reporter who did not have a security clearance. That's exactly what this is. Pete Hegseth was not prosecuted or reprimanded in any way for doing that. These counts for John Bolton date back to 2018, 2019, and so 8 counts of transmission of national defense information, classified documents. Counts 9 through 18 are classified as, so that's 9 or 10 counts, 10 counts, I guess. Retention of national defense information. And it doesn't give the specific federal code section. But when I read this part, I was like, oh, wow, that's exactly what Donald Trump did. And so I pulled up Donald Trump's indictment from the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Counts 1 through 32, willful retention of national defense information under 18 USC 793E. Each count, maximum term of 10 years imprisonment. That's violating the Espionage Act. John Bolton has 10 counts of violating the Espionage Act. Donald Trump had 32 counts of violating the Espionage Act. John Bolton, 8 counts of transmission of national defense information, classified information. Pete Hegseth did exactly the same thing in his Signal chat and received no criminal charge, not even an investigation for that. So I've got some things to do today, and I've got band practice tonight. But I will do a deeper dive into this document later on, probably tomorrow. So John Bolton has been indicted for the exact same things that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump did. Donald Trump was indicted for 32 counts of violating the Espionage Act, and we all know how that worked out. And Pete Hegseth was never charged or investigated for any of his conduct. So there you go.
So it turns out that Donald Trump is costing us all a lot of money by blocking a transition to clean energy. And if you want proof, I've got it right here for you. Stay till the end because the final slide is... This is from a post from the Washington Post today. Very heartening news up front. Renewables are still going to overtake coal as top global electricity provider despite U.S. pullback. And the pullbacks we're talking about there are the clean energy tax credits that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act, a bill that was passed by Democrats and signed by President Biden. This bill was transitioning us very quickly and effectively to clean energy, saving people a ton of money and creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. But Trump has effectively killed all of it. Yes, the oil and gas industry ended up putting about $500 million into Trump's campaign. That's in case you wanted to know the why. So that's the bad news, that last week the International Energy Agency basically halved its forecast of renewable energy growth in the U.S. because of Donald Trump. They literally cut in half the progress we are going to make. That really sucks, but the great news is the U.S. is an outlier. Other countries are pivoting to solar and wind because dramatic price reductions have made them the cheapest options. If you're a more visual person, you can see it this way. Look, this is the United States. That's our clean energy going down. Look at the rest of the world going up. They're leaving us behind. China and India are key drivers of this trajectory. They're still both building coal plants, but renewables are growing much faster, and coal use is expected to peak in the next few years, followed by steady declines. Why again? Because renewables are plentiful, widely available, and cheap. Meanwhile, in Trump's America, headline after headline like this. All these countries literally going, we're saving money. Sorry, you're not. We're also keeping our air cleaner for our kids, too. Win-win. And then the post talks about all the other countries that are transitioning quickly to clean energy. You've got Brazil, you've got Pakistan, you have a bunch of countries in Africa, all saving money, but not us. And now we come to the final slide in this presentation. My favorite thing, it's a quote by a mining billionaire. He says, renewable energy isn't being done by countries because they are woke. That is a stupid statement. It is being done because it is economic. Of course, the only economics that Donald Trump cares about are Donald Trump's economics. And that's why the world is saving money, but we will not.
I watched Trump's announcement on IVF today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. And just for a little background, my wife and I are currently dealing with infertility. Trump and others spoke for just under an hour. Trump alone mentioned Biden on 9 separate occasions when talking about IVF in the U.S. in his current administration, which makes total sense. The craziest thing that was said, and this is a direct quote from Donald Trump, I don't think any president's ever ended a war. Direct quote. So Trump says he's slashing the cost of IVF, and he says that this is a huge win for women across the country. And then he says, I want to thank RFK Jr.'s wife for destroying the women of The View. Regarding drug prices at different points, he will say they've come down 200, 600, 400%. They've come down 500, 600, 800%. They've come down 500, 600, 700, 800%, and even more in some cases. He says in order to accomplish that, of course, that other countries are going to agree to raise their prices so that we can lower our prices. And then if they don't, we're just going to tariff them. So if other countries don't agree to arbitrarily raise the price of their drugs because Donald Trump says he wants cheaper drugs, then you're going to pay money because, again, tariffs are a tax on you. He's talking about GLP-1s, and he says that in London they cost $130 or sometimes $88, and in New York they cost $1,300. The NHS caps prescription prices at £9.90. That's it. That's the highest it can go. Trump says the cost of IVF drugs is going to go down by 73% per cycle. I would love for him to explain what per cycle means. I would also love for him to explain to me what a luteal phase is. He's trying to talk about these drugs and he's trying to pronounce their names when he was unable to pronounce acetaminophen, and he messes up on multiple occasions, and then he says, direct quote, why can't you give them simple names? Here's the make baby drug. God damn, he is stupid. Because we're talking about IVF, he says that there's already been $17 trillion of investment in the United States, and it's going to be $20 trillion by the end of the year. He also says that effective immediately, he's going to make it legal for companies to provide insurance for fertility drugs. I'm just going to let you know that all of the insurance programs that Congress is allowed to get into already allows for insurance coverage of IVF and other fertility treatments. Yeah, he's making it sound like this is a new thing that he's just making up, when later in the speech other people will say that 3 out of 10 people already have fertility treatments covered by their insurance. He also says that Democrats have done nothing about this and that they're still going to try and take credit for it, but he says if he does enough of these, then maybe eventually people will recognize that it's him who's doing it. Next up is Katie Britt. You might remember her as the woman who sat in her kitchen after Joe Biden's last State of the Union address and gave that completely false story about a woman who, under Joe Biden's policy, had been sex trafficked at the age of 12, when in fact that had occurred in 2004, and she did it with a completely dead look on her face the entire time. She has some very interesting things to say. She says the greatest gift that God ever gave her was the ability to be a mom, and that she wants to give that to everyone. Now, before I say this, can I remind you that my family is dealing with infertility? She's saying that that was a gift from God to her that other women don't get. Katie Britt, go fuck yourself. She says IVF is legal in all 50 states and Democrats are just fear-mongering about this issue. Yeah, but if you need a DNR in Texas after it doesn't take, you can just go fuck yourself and die in a parking lot. Next up is Dr. Oz, who just says weird things. He says that 1 in 3 families are under-babied. Direct quote, don't know what that means. He says, yeah, there's going to be a lot of Trump babies, but there will just be a lot of babies. He's on this pro-fascist, pro-capitalist idea that if we don't keep up the birth rates, then obviously the ultra-wealthy will lose their base of workers. And so he's just pushing that same pro-capitalist, pro-fascist idea. And then he says that drugs went from $240 to $10. And he says, I don't even know if we can do the math on it. It's too high a drop to calculate without a studied approach. This is an idiot would say that. Sorry again if I'm getting a little bit heated here, but as I mentioned to you earlier, my family is currently dealing with infertility, and these people are making a mockery of the struggles that these families are going through because they have no idea what they're talking about and are spewing bullshit out of their ass constantly in order to make Trump look good. Next up was Kyle Busch's wife, you know, the NASCAR driver. Apparently they dealt with infertility, and she says that after they heard a poor couple in a fertility clinic saying that money is the only issue for them, that God was planting a seed in their heart to make a foundation. And in 13 years of that foundation being there, they've been able to help less than 10 couples bring a child into this world per year in the 13 years that they've been there. She says 108 is all they've accomplished. And if you needed any more proof that these NASCAR people are white trash, their two kids, they named them Brexton and Lennox. Next up is RFK Jr., and you know he's going to spout his fascist shit. He also says that we're below the replacement levels. The fertility is at 1.8, and it needs to be at 2.1, and it used to be at 3.6. Maybe people don't want to have kids because we fucked the country, we fucked the environment, we fucked our living situations, we fucked the cost of housing, we fucked the cost of food, we fucked the cost of insurance. All of those things might be reasons that people don't want to bring a baby into this world, but no, RFK Jr. just says that it's infertility issues that are way lower, and they know the root cause. He also says that we're poisoning an entire generation of children, and then says we need to give them more GLP-1s. My God. And then he says, Trump, I know you said on your plane that you're not going to get into heaven, but you're definitely going to get to heaven because you're doing God's work by having more American babies and also for settling the conflict in the Middle East. Now back to Trump. He says that Gaza is a tough neighborhood, and then he gets asked a question by a CNN correspondent, and he says, not you, you're CNN fake news. And then a separate correspondent asks him, hey, do you have a timeline since you spoke with President Putin today on when you're going to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? And he says, direct quote, I'd say within 2 weeks or so. Pretty quick. He says because he's going to have separate meetings with Zelensky and Putin, he says that they're separate but equal. Again, not knowing what that means in this country at all, in any way, shape, or form. He also says, though, that when he ends that conflict, that's going to be number 9. You know, the 9th war he solved when it's been 0 so far. After that is when he says he doesn't think any president has ever stopped a war before, but he's stopped 8 of them. He also says, in his opinion, Ukraine would have been World War III, but now it won't, but millions of people are dead. Oh, also, it never would have happened if 2020 wasn't rigged. He calls Ozempic the fat drug again, and then says it's going to be under $150 very soon. And then Dr. Oz kind of weasels his way into the microphone and is like, actually, we haven't negotiated on that one at all. So again, he's just lying so bad that even his cabinet has to step in and be like, actually, I don't want to go to jail over that, so I'm going to tell you the truth about that. He says he doesn't know anything about Christians who are against IVF, and he doesn't know why they would be, because this is the most pro-life stance you could possibly take. He also gets asked, do you know anything about Bolton getting indicted? And he says, no, I don't know anything about that either. He's not a Christian, and his cabinet doesn't inform him of anything, and he's not in charge of anything. He is literally just a puppet figurehead who is being run by Stephen Miller. He says Democrats want to spend $1.5 trillion on immigrant health care. I'm going to remind you that the operating budget of the United States government is about $5 trillion, and about $1 trillion of that goes to defense alone. So of what's remaining, he's saying more than 33% of what's remaining Democrats want to spend on immigrants' health care. The only other statistic that's been given to us from this administration is KK Caroline, who says that $9.1 billion, not $1.5 trillion, $9.1 billion is being spent on healthcare for immigrants through EMTALA, which means you can't just say, hey, you're an immigrant and you're having a heart attack, we're just going to throw you outside to die, which makes sense. You are pro-life, aren't you, MAGA? A reporter asks him, are you going to put sanctions on Russia? And he says, maybe in 2 weeks. He also says that he said this to Putin in this exact same way. Would you mind if I gave a couple thousand tomahawks to your enemy? And then he says that Putin said no. What is he talking about? And finally, he says that gas is going to be down to $2 very soon, even though the national average gas price has barely changed since he's been president at all. And here's a direct quote that he finishes this with. The price of things are down. No explanation, just things. There you go, 8 minutes. I didn't know he'd be speaking like 10 fucking days in a row, and I'm sorry that I got a little heated in here, but this is an issue that is near and dear to me and my family's heart. All of that being said, some of you didn't like that I'm plugging my Patreon, that I'm offering additional content to those who wish to support me and get additional content from me, but I am going to plug it again here. If you want to, you can go on Patreon or Substack. Patreon is cheaper because Substack won't let me go down to $3 per month, and you can get additional content from me. I'm going to be putting out 1 to 2 things a week, covering separate corporate news, doing some behind the scene things. I think I'm going to do some cooking videos for you too, because why the hell not? It's about my life and I get to share it with you however I want. So anyways, just throwing that out there that it is an option. It's not something that I'm trying to do as a money grab, although I would love to be able to do this as a job full time. But again, offering additional content for a nominal fee, I think is something that's perfectly reasonable. And fuck these people. Fuck Katie Britt especially for her shitty fucking comments. Also, always fuck Donald Trump. He's a piece of shit. Also, if you can, really do try and make it out for No Kings. I would really appreciate it if we could get an even bigger crowd than we had last time across the country.